Welcome to our webinar on starting out your first school year and information about ASHA and licensure. This webinar was developed by a group of SLPs at Cobb Pediatric Therapy Services. Um, my name is Debbie Lozo, and I'm just a spokesperson for this webinar today. I have had many years of experience in working in public schools, and also have supervised and done many ASHA CFs and state licensure supervision. So anyways, our purpose in developing this webinar is making sure that you have the information you need to help you start out the school year and also end the school year successfully. For SLPs, we know that getting your CCCs is one of the most important milestones in your career. So we want to make sure that you have the information you need and know what to do. The first thing we'll start out with are ASHA guidelines. And of course, being familiar with the ASHA website and looking for the CF or clinical fellow information is really important. And it's all there. All the information you need to help you feel comfortable about what you need to do. But a couple tips. Paperwork is ultimately your responsibility, even though you have a supervisor and many other people helping you. It's going to come down to your diligent completion of paperwork to make sure that everything is turned in so that you can get your CCCs. Follow-up is important. And who should you follow up with? Surely your supervisor for your CF year. And sometimes your supervisor, you may have two different supervisors, one for ASHA CF and one for your state licensure professional year. So just make sure you know who they are and you're working with them and following up with them. Make sure that you're familiar with the ASHA guidelines. And then anytime you send in any information to either ASHA or your state license organization, make sure that you make copies of it because it could get lost. I hate to say that, but it's happened a couple times. And then make sure you use some kind of trackable mail or even a return receipt, something that gives you proof that the information actually got there. Once you've gotten started, sometimes it's really good to look at the end in mind. And the end is getting your CF approved so that you can get your CCCs. So sometimes we think it's good if you kind of look ahead. On this slide, you'll see the ASHA link for getting your CF approved. So when you get to the end of your CF, that's what we're talking about. There are things like the Clinical Fellow Skills Inventory that needs to be completed at 3 different periods during your clinical fellow year, and your supervisor fills it out. But it's not a bad idea to ask your supervisor when are those 3 times and even help he or she remember that it's coming up. You must have a 3 or above on the identified core skills in the final segment of your CF Clinical Fellow Skills Inventory. So that's an important part to remember. The Clinical Fellows year is 36 weeks of full-time work experience, and your supervisor must maintain or hold their CCC during the entire CF supervision. So no lapsing of your CCCs, or it would impair your CF year. There is an application for membership and certification that must be completed kind of by the end of your CF. Some people fill it out at the beginning and others wait till the end. It's an expensive fee to do this, so you might want to wait more towards the end after you've been working a while, but that's up to you. A separate SLP CF report and rating form is required if any changes occur during your CF year. For example, change in mentor, location, your work hours, if they're suddenly become a lot less, things like that. And I can tell you that I experienced that when there was an SLP who had a CF supervisor for the first half of the year, and then the CF supervisor went on maternity leave. So I helped out and picked up the rest of that SLP CF year, and we had to fill out separate reports for um, our CF report and rating form. The first SLP supervisor had to do her part, and then as the second SLP supervisor, I had to do my part. Um, you have to be become concrete sequential or even anal retentive when you start filling out these forms, because you want to make sure all blanks and boxes are filled in. There'll be a delay in processing your application or anything you send in if there's something missing. Um, just kind of remember that the full-time SLPCF consists of a minimum of 35 hours worked per week, and if you add that up, it equals 1,260 hours throughout the 36-week SLPCF. So sometimes we have days where we only work part of a day, or things happen and a day gets canceled or whatever. But just know that if you get those hours during the 36-week period, you should be okay. The SLPCF also should consist of 36 mentoring activities, including 18 hours of on-site direct client contact observations, meaning that the CF supervisor is with you at your work site as you work with students and do various things, involved in your job. And then the other 18 are for other monitoring activities, which could include, but are not limited to, emails, phone conferences, sharing of resources, and consultation. So many activities can take place during that. And then it's important to note that if something changes and your professional experience is less than 5 hours per week, it cannot be used to meet the SLP-CF requirement. So it's definitely a requirement of the hours per week. And then just a tip, use black ink only when completing the form. Print all information clearly. Okay, now that we've talked about some tips for ASHA, let's talk about some different tips for state licensure guidelines. And we're going to start with Alabama, and we're going to cover the states that new SLPs in our company work in. So in Alabama, completed paperwork has to be submitted within 30 days of the completion of the supervised professional experience. So sometimes you're going to see different names for what this is. Licensure, in this case, calls supervised professional experience. Other states might call it something else. But this is the period, your first year on the job, where you are supervised as a person with kind of a temporary or limited license. And most often you can do your CF year and your licensure supervision at the same time. And many times you'll have the same person, but occasionally you might have two different supervisors. Okay, so the licensure fee in Alabama is $75. Again, that reminder about how you mail it, make sure that you get a receipt or certified mail or some way to track it. You have to have, in Alabama, you have to provide the licensure board with your undergraduate and graduate transcriptions, results of your national examination, which is usually the praxis, a notarized statement from your supervisor indicating that you have completed that professional experience year, including the number of hours per week worked, the place of employment, supervisor's name, Alabama license number, or CCC or its equivalent, and then a letter from the director of the training program, and that is usually your college or university, verifying that you have completed the required hours of direct clinical experience with individuals with communication disorders. On this next slide, we have common omissions when submitting licensure application. So this is pretty much a repeat of the first slide, but it's not a bad reminder for you to help you remember what needs to be there. And then at the bottom, I liked that the bottom to the last bullet there talks about the fact that there are two separate fees, an application fee, which is $200, and a licensure fee, which is $75. The application fee is due with the application, whereas the licensure fee may be paid at the same time or paid once the application is approved for licensure. So you have a little more time on the $75. In Florida, here we have the link to the Florida licensure information. The supervisor must complete forms, certain forms. There's a supplemental evaluation form every 3 months, and hopefully that could coincide with your ASHA CF evaluation, because that also happens approximately every 3 months if you work in the schools. And then a supervisor report and $280, at least the last time we checked, and an initial license application. Here's the Florida Licensing Board link, and after the, in addition, to the $280, SLPs have to show proof of a 1-hour HIV/AIDS course and also proof of 2 hours prevention of medical errors course. And both of these can be obtained on www.speechpathology.com, which is offered by Cobb Pediatric Therapy Services for free. So you'll be able to get those. And then, of course, the supervisory evaluation form we mentioned and the supervisory report. In Georgia, all documentation must be sent to the Georgia Licensing Board within 14 days of completion of your professional experience year. And there are a couple different websites that will help you there. There's the sosgeorgia.gov, has a general website, and you can find speech pathology on there. Once you've completed your PCE, your paid clinical experience year, along with your CF year, you fill out the completion of PCE form with your supervisor and have it notarized. And most of the time the supervisor does this, but then meets with you so you can review it, and then you both get it notarized. And you fill out a permanent license application, and then you attach a check to the top of the application, and then you're going to send that check to the Georgia, or you're going to make that check out to the Georgia State Board of Speech Language Pathology, Audiology, and that's $110. And again, the reminder about how to mail it, and make sure you get a receipt. And then there's a link to the form, the actual form that's on the same website. In South Carolina, here's the link to the information that you need there for South Carolina, and it includes the report of completed internship, an application for a license that is notarized, a fee of $220, and proof of identity, photo ID, driver's license, etc. And actually most states are going to require that of you at some point in the process. In Maryland, state guidelines include or go into more information about moving from a limited license to a full license. So the limited license can be transferred to a full license once all requirements have been met and the limited licensee has been supervised for at least 9 months. And there's a form that must be completed, must be completed at the end, but no later than 60 days prior to the expiration of the limited license. No other application fees are required there. And then these are the steps for working through applying for a full license, and the fee there is $150. So just we'll leave that with you. So we just wanted to kind of give you the steps there. We'll leave that with you to review if Maryland's your state. And then in Virginia, initial licensure, for initial licensures, CFs work under a provisional license for up to 18 months. Once the CF year is completed, a full application is submitted along with a $135 fee. Full Virginia license requires the CCC and a passing score on the praxis, which just about all the other states do too. Okay, so we hope this brief information helps you and at least gets you started on where to go for information. We want to encourage you to start and finish strong. Make sure all your documentation is complete, sign all your forms, file all your files, communicate with others, and have a positive attitude. With all that, we want to say have a great school year. We know this is your first year. Congratulations on starting your CF, and um, just want you to know we're supporting you to get to that end result.